Hi, ladies. This is Lutz Herrington. I'm here today with a really special lady. This is Kellie Phillips, and she is with New York Life. She's an agent there, but she's got a lot more to her story than just what she's doing now. And it was interesting reading over your bio, Kellie, that kind of your choice of where you went wasn't that far off of where I ended up doing what I'm doing currently. So it sounds like you started in executive management, did the career, raised your kids, did all kinds of really important things, and then got to a crossroads. And I thought it was fascinating when you said you had two jobs that you were like laid off from in less than a year, and you were like, stuck, what do I do? And you went and saw your male financial advisor, and the light bulb went off, and you went, okay, this is something I could do, and I could do it for women. Am I correct in how I read that?
Exactly. Almost exactly correct. It was actually, I turned 55. I had two kids in college, 3 jobs in 2 years. And I was like tired of having other people determine my destiny, I guess you could say. So yes, absolutely. It was a male financial advisor who said, hey, women are underserved and you'd be really good at it. And so I took the leap.
Good. And how do you like it?
I like it. So my first literally 3 years, my business plan was decide if you like the work. Because I'd never networked before. I'd managed lots of people, but if I went to an event, I just talked to people that I knew. And so
that one.
I wasn't right. And so I was like, well, I have to meet new people all the time. Am I going to even like doing it? And what I found was I really enjoyed talking with women. I was totally comfortable with it. I wasn't nervous. If they were a business owner, I loved learning about their business, and if they weren't, I just enjoyed that, getting to know people. And so it was like, aha, no, I really do like it. Now, I probably still gravitate a little bit towards people I know in a networking meeting, but I'm much better at
well, and what I found is, if they're talking to somebody you don't know, they're going to introduce you. So it's okay. You're still networking. That's my justification for it anyways, when I go to those things. I'm a little bit of a wallflower. I'm definitely an introvert. So I totally hear what you said, how, your reaction there. So tell me, how did you and I met several years ago, I believe, probably in one of those networking events.
Exactly.
And you came to the awareness that I was doing this work on helping women recover from financial abuse. And
yes,
I'm sure that somewhere in your life you've met someone. I don't believe you've been through a financially abusive relationship, have you?
Oh, I have.
Oh, you have. Okay, forgive me for forgiving that. Do you want to just in brief tell us your story a little bit?
I would love to. I wish I didn't have one. And for a long time, I didn't actually recognize it as that. Actually, it was reading your newsletter and blog and realizing, oh my goodness. So when I got married, I didn't know what his finances were. I didn't have any due diligence done. I quickly found out that he was not financially fit. So I got into a situation where we were buying a house. This is when I found out, because he couldn't be on the loan. And we put together a plan to pay for things, a budget, but it ended up all landing on me. And over time, it just snowballed. So I was paying for everything. And it was horrifying, actually. And it got to the point where when we divorced, what I learned was that since your income is community property, it doesn't matter if you've had your spouse sign off their spousal rights, doesn't matter at all. They're still, getting 50% of your retirement of the house, even if they signed off on it. And I had to start all over, literally. I mean, we had to sell the house. I had 2 little kids, even though he'd never spent any money on it. And I had to give him half my retirement at a time when the market was down. So I had to start all over that way. It was just a mess. I had to pay alimony for a year.
Yeah, I've heard of women having to pay alimony. Thankfully, I wrote it into my divorce decree that there would be no spousal support. And that meant either direction. And
Right.
that is
Well, it was
what they
just the first
don't.
year while we were going through it. So
That's good. I'm glad you didn't get,
yeah,
I've got somebody who's, her husband's collecting Social Security and out there partying and doing his thing, and she still has to pay the alimony, even though the child support, she never got child support. It's just like this crazy because she
it
was
is.
the
It's just,
primary breadwinner winner while they were married. That she
and
ended
that
up.
wasn't my plan.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I hadn't planned to. He had been making more when we met, but then I went on to be successful and he stopped doing anything. So it's why I have some of my advice is
Yeah,
really
well, I'm
just
excited to
basic.
hear that. I'm excited to hear that. So explain to us how your business can help women who've been financially abused and are working toward recovery. What is it that you, as a New York Life agent, what is it you do, and how can that help women in this group?
So the way I approach any new client is to build a relationship, right? And so getting to know someone so that they can trust you is really important, especially when you've been through something like that, because oftentimes you're embarrassed or you don't really want to talk about it, but you also probably don't necessarily know where to go. So that's not a service I charge for. That's just part of who I am and how I've built my business, because everyone's situation is different. And so the way I help is hopefully I instill trust enough that I'm a financial resource as you're going. I would refer you, right, as an accounting person. You're going to have trusted professionals around you to help you with the things that you're not an expert at, because now you might have been deferring all those decisions in the past. And so now you need to make them. And so the biggest thing I would say is I'm a resource. I have a vast network of trusted professionals that I can refer, no matter what it is that you might need. And I think it's just having someone who has a financial background that you can ask questions and can point you in the right direction is the main thing that I do for women that are recovering.
And as an agent for New York Life, you are a financial advisor, but you also sell long-term care insurance. Is that correct? You do
I
both
do.
of those things?
Yeah. So I can help with any type of insurance as far as life insurance. So people always think, oh, well, I don't have anyone to leave anything to. But life insurance is just a financial vehicle, and it can do all kinds of different things. And then there's long-term care insurance. So again, I've owned my New York Life agency for 5 years, but I first got introduced to New York Life when I was 18. I got my first policy with them through a different way. So I, over the years, had gotten the products. I got long-term care when I was divorced and I had 2 little kids. And, when I would change jobs, I'd roll over my 401k. So all of those things are things that I can help women with. If they're worried about being able to retire, if they're worried about what am I going to do if I needed care, long-term care, all of those things that kind of keep you up at night. They're not urgent right away, but they nag at you. Those are the kinds of things that I can help with.
Well, in my experience personally, even though I'm fairly financially savvy and I'm very comfortable in finances, is the investing world is like Greek to me. And I consider myself, educated and knowledgeable and comfortable with finances. But when it comes to investing, I see a huge gap in the market for female financial advisors, because women are going to be more comfortable with women, generally speaking. And if you're coming out of a financially abusive relationship, even more so. I like that you work to build that trust first, because I think that there's that fear of going in and seeing a man and being mansplained,
feeling stupid, right?
Told, don't worry about it, I'll take care of it. And if you've been financially abused, the last thing you want to hear a man say is don't worry about it. No, you should be
make you feel bad
about it.
Right.
At least
you should be worried about it
and understanding it. And what I've found working with a financial advisor is I need to have somebody not only that I trust so that I can tell them the truth and share my concerns and share my worries and share my goals and my dreams, but also so they can explain things to me. And I can say, time out, back up, say that again slower, or Can you
In
rephrase that into English? Because
Right. So that
you're
was what
speaking
I
Greek
had
right now.
found. So I really like my New York Life agent. He's the one that talked me into doing this, but his approach is to use analogies. To me, they never made any sense to what he was trying to explain. And I think there's a financial advisor out there for every personality, right? I mean, my goal is to have people be able to ask a question and not feel stupid, or not feel bad that they haven't done something sooner or more or better. So, so I approach it the way that I would want to hear it. And so that's not going to be right for everyone. And I totally get that. And I am fine with that. But I need it to be logical, to make sense, and not have to be a finance major. So as an example, one of the tenets of how do you invest, what you invest in, there's above the line and below the line. So below the line grows, but it's steady. There's no risk. Above the line is the stuff that, goes up and down. And how much you invest in which side depends on your age. So if you're 30, you only need 30% below the line, and you can have 70% above the line, more risky. Is it an exact science? No, but it gives you an idea of how to go. And then the vehicles that are above the line or below the line are your choices. And so I walk through it in I don't want to say simplified, but just a more logical way, I guess, that doesn't have to require knowing how to do compound interest in your head.
Right. Please don't go there. So let me ask you this. If a woman is recovering from financial abuse, where in the order of all the things you've heard me talk about does coming to someone like you and working on that long game, because you're really long game, you're
Yes.
like the long-term planning for the future. At what point do you advise a woman coming out of a difficult financial relationship, just trying to get her feet underneath her? At what point is she going to get the most out of visiting you?
So you might think that it would be once she was settled, but the truth is your biggest asset when you think about investing or any kind of financial planning is time. Mm-hmm. So the more time you have, the more options you have. So it's almost better to try to, find me or someone that you trust as soon as you can have a conversation about it, because there's little steps you can take immediately, and there's questions you're going to have. And so you're not going to know what your questions are because you don't know what you even want to know yet, but I'll know. And so if I'm talking to someone and they're like, my divorce isn't final, I don't even have my settlement yet. It's like, okay, well, so I'll ask certain questions. So to help the swirl get a little bit more easy to manage. So I would say as early as possible, because initially it'll be just ascertaining what you have, and then it'll be coming up with a game plan.
Okay, now what if you get a woman coming to you who is either currently married or comes in with her spouse, and you suspect financial abuse? Have you seen that? Have you seen a case where maybe they don't realize it's going on and you can recognize it because of your history and your education and your knowledge of it?
Well, that's interesting. So I haven't had anyone come in like that exactly, but there's all kinds of training that we have to take to spot that kind of stuff. So annually, there's always continued education in the financial services industry. There's more continued education than I even knew was available, which is good because I like to learn. So it keeps you up on stuff. But a big thing is fraud and financial abuse. A lot of times it's focused on the elderly, but it could happen anywhere. So you look for the same red flags. One of the things we do particularly is to get a trusted person, another person that you trust, whether it's a friend, a daughter, whatever, when we are meeting to do any kind of an application, so that if in the future we see something, we have someone else that we're allowed to talk to. So that's one thing that we do kind of as proactively. But if I see unusual behavior in a client, so let's say it's a client, then that's my red flag. If they're investing, if they're taking money out, if they want to do something and they don't care how much it's going to cost, all these little things where you can tell that doesn't make sense which is why getting to know my clients is so important. So I know what's normal and what's not. And then there's a reporting, structure that you can go through. So New York Life has its own, like, hey, if you suspect this, this is where you report it, and this is what we'll do. Every state has its own, fraud kind of thing. But what I have seen is I've seen married women that I've met with who are deferring all their decisions to their husband. I don't know if there's fraud going on, but I know that that's not a very safe approach. And so then my strategy is to, without being pushy or bossy or making anyone feel like they should have been doing this already, just educating them a little bit and having them get interested and realize it isn't scary, and so they can ask questions and be more informed, because really the best defense against financial abuse is knowledge.
Yeah, for sure. That definitely makes a difference. And I love that you are trained to look for fraud. And, a lot of financial abuse includes fraudulent activities, not always. Some of it's just, manipulation.
Signing off on something you don't know what it is, right? I mean, oftentimes if you're married, you have to sign no matter what is done. And oftentimes a spouse will sign and they don't even read it, right? So strongly encouraging people to do that is helpful.
Have you ever had a situation where you've strongly suspected that it wasn't healthy, and you've had to figure out how to talk to the woman without the man available? And
there's a fine line. Yeah, there's a fine line, right? Because whoever is designated as the owner is the only one that's supposed to be able to get information on a policy. So there's compliance restrictions. So let's say the husband has an account and the wife's the beneficiary. If he tries to change, if you try to change beneficiaries, sometimes that's not even legal. Sometimes your spouse has to be the beneficiary. But other times, if I see there's things like that going on, I'm not permitted to share with the wife. And I have had times where I've been uncomfortable and had to go to the compliance group and say, okay, this is my situation. I don't have any concrete proof, but it doesn't feel right. And so then I have people that will help me that have more experience at spotting and where to go.
Okay. Yeah.
I'm not on it by my own. I'm not doing it all by myself. I have a whole team of people.
That would be really difficult, I would think. And, obviously with our group, we want to encourage them to share the resources we have here, and to, in a situation like yours, you could, maybe you could direct them to a resource like ours. But I just can't even imagine sitting in a room with a man and a wife and suspecting that it's going on, and having to try to determine what to do next and how to handle it delicately. Because if he's financially abusing you, we know there's a 98 to 99% chance there's other abuse going on. And so you got to be really careful not to trigger
something that would be worse.
Yeah. Okay. So what would you recommend specifically for women who have been financially abused and are working on financially recovery? Like you talked about coming to you as soon as possible, but what would you advise a woman who, like you and I, starting over from zero after, a divorce, devastating, I had nothing. Right. If I came to you at the beginning, what would you say? What would the steps be that you would say, you need to start working towards this, or do this in this timeline? What would you guide somebody on, and things like that?
It's going to sound kind of simplified, but the first thing I'd advise is to come up with your budget. Figure out what your income is that you actually get, whether it's monthly, weekly, however you get it. I have a woman who gets, her only income is the spousal support she gets. So whatever and then your fixed expenses, right? The things that you don't have a choice on. And it's funny how many people don't have any kind of budget. I mean, I did my mom's first budget ever when she was 80.
Yeah, we've been talking about it a lot. We talked about the group, and I'm working on a course we were talking about this morning. How do we get a very, very simple budget into this course so that those who have never done it can understand?
There are more people that haven't done it than
what I do. You start with the fixed expenses. Go on.
Because that's what I did for my mom. And so then I found all these things that you could negotiate to be less, or that you don't really need. And so getting that, understanding that makes you feel like you're in control.
Mhm.
It really does instill confidence, and it makes you feel better. Now, it also may scare the crap out of you because you may realize, oh dear, I need to make
Yeah.
some shifts. But the sooner you know that, the better, because
Right.
not knowing that is how, whatever you do have just starts to drain away. So that's the first thing. And I do that even with younger women who have never been abused, but just don't have any idea what to do about money because their dads always did it, or they're not married and they just don't know. So once you have that, then one of the things I also recommend is put saving into that budget. Don't spend what you think you have to and then save what's left. Then there's never enough left, right? That's not the way to approach it.
Well, they always say pay yourself first, and people don't
Right.
understand what they mean. That's what they mean.
Exactly.
You take your savings off the top, and then you go your fixed expenses, and then you worry
Yes.
about the variable. No, I'm right. You're speaking my language, Kelly.
Yeah.
Good job. Keep going.
Yeah. And I wish that I had, had known it when I was younger, which is the other thing, right? It's time. So again, there's always something that you can do. So that's one of the things I like to instill, is that it doesn't matter if you're 70 or 35, right? Whatever your age, there's still something that you can do. And it just changes what that is based on your age. But don't be afraid. Don't think that you can never retire, or because there's stuff that you can do. It's just depends on your circumstances, and everyone's is different.
True enough. True enough. Okay, so what financial advice, just generally speaking, would you give, other than the budgeting, which is a good
Yeah.
one, would you give to a woman who's either working on leaving or who has recently left? Like somebody just
Rush.
starting to figure this out.
Yeah.
As a financial advisor, how would you speak to that woman as opposed to someone who's already left, has their settlement, got their budget, and is ready to okay, now I need to see what can I slice off for my long-term plan? What if you got somebody really, really green?
Well, at that point, you really, you have to, because usually people that are in that spot have so much swirling around in their head, it can cause inaction, right? Like you don't know what to do first, so you don't do anything. And so really it depends on their situation. If they haven't left and it's unhealthy and there's a concern, then it has nothing to do with financial planning. It's getting her safe, right? And so I'm also on the nonprofit board, the San Luis Obispo Legal Assistance Foundation. So they provide free legal services to the elderly, veterans, and those less fortunate. And they're networked with the women's shelter and a variety of other resources. And so depending on the situation, it might just be connecting her to other people. But again, you want to make sure that you understand where all of the assets of your life together are. So if you haven't left and you have no idea what accounts have money because you haven't been paying the bills and you don't know anything, then my recommendation is to find out however you can without endangering yourself, right? So, and it doesn't have to be blatant, like demanding that someone tell you, like look around, figure it out.
Right.
Because people are not always nice. And you would be surprised at what people will be doing that you have no idea about, because if you're not that kind of a person, you don't think that way.
That's
So
true.
you just have to look for statements, understand your taxes, look at your, tax returns. I mean, just so that you know where your income, because again, spouses will sign up on a tax return. They don't have any idea what's in it. I'm sure you probably have to worry about that.
Well, one of the things that John brought up in the interview I did a couple of weeks ago with him, and I've heard this before as well, is with e-signatures being so common now, that we're seeing a rise in that kind of a fraud, and a husband signing on behalf of a wife electronically without her knowledge. And that's a really hard one to fight, but that's where.
Right. So that's something that I have to, sorry, we got a little bit internet there, but New York Life used to be very conservative. I mean, they're a 175-year-old company. So everything was paper, in person, forever until COVID hit. So when COVID hit, they rolled out Zoom, which thankfully that's a wonderful thing. But they rolled out, I'm doing an application. I'm sending a DocuSign email to an email that then someone's going through the link to sign. Well, who's to say who's doing that?
Mhm.
You have to use your, due diligence to, like, I can do it while we're all on Zoom, right? So if I'm not with you in person, I can, say, okay, now it's your turn to sign. Now it's your turn to sign. What email do you want me to send it to? Or I can be in person. I can have my own laptop. I can hand it to them. There's ways that you can,
Oh, that's
but
good to know. Yeah.
yeah, you don't have to do it that way. I just am really cautious, particularly if I've seen any sign that something
Right.
might not be on the up and up.
That makes sense. I like that. So really understanding what the finances are at the point if you're trying to leave. We talk about that a lot in the group too. Can you dig in? Can you get some information? Can you set things up separately? Can you stash some cash? There's all kinds of steps that you have to do very carefully, especially if you're being subjected to other kinds of abuse. Like you said, safety first always, but we really want to encourage women who think they might be financially abused to join the group and to share the resources with other people to figure out if they are, which, if you question it, it probably is, honestly. And then what can you do in your specific case? Is there someone else's computer you can use to get access to accounts? If your name is on that account, you have a right to the access to the account.
And you can get it. You just have to go the path to ask for it. And yeah,
right.
Absolutely.
And you have to be aware that he may be notified. You can ask that question if you walk into the bank and say, I believe I'm on a joint account. Can you tell me? And if you show your ID, they should be able to say, yes, you are, or no, you're not. I don't know how far they'll go, but I think that taking those steps and sometimes doing it physically instead of leaving an electronic trail can make sense too, as well.
Absolutely.
But I like that you've got this resource of the legal assistance, because that's something that we get a lot of people asking about. And I know, we're nationwide and you're specifically San Luis Obispo County, so it's a very narrow niche, but
well, just
I
for that,
you're
it is
connected to the women's network or the women's shelters, because obviously if you're dealing with an abusive situation, that's a first line of defense. Get into a shelter, and if the
Right.
shelter can point you to some legal aid, that would be
Right.
helpful too. Mhm.
So I would say that it's narrow as far as that assistance. Lumina is the local agency that we're in partnership with, and we just rolled out family law, because it was basically, a lot of it was housing in the past.
Mhm.
But as far as the New York Life part goes, I'm licensed in other states, and I'm a registered representative with the SEC. So I'm not just limited to San Luis Obispo on the financial services side, just on the knowing who knowing who
right
to connect you with locally.
Okay, cool. So what would you say, having been through financial abuse, what would you say is something every woman should know to help protect themselves from ending up being financially abused?
I would say do not defer financial decisions or knowledge. So let me explain. So oftentimes when a couple's going to get together, they split up the duties, right? Like, I'll be cooking, you're doing the grocery shopping, or I'm whatever. And oftentimes the financial stuff, sorry for the ringing in the background, the decisions about insurance or where you're invested, like investing is one of those things that most women, like, they don't even know if they have a 401k, what it's in, right? So don't do that. I did that. I did that up until I took this job. And I still thought that I knew what I was doing, because it seemed complicated and I just didn't have time or the energy. It doesn't have to be complicated. And so don't do that. It doesn't mean that person, maybe there's one person who writes out your bills, but you need to understand that. And so that, again, knowledge and not deferring is important. I mean, one of the smartest friends I have from college, I was talking to her and she goes, "Oh, my husband handles all that. I was like, what just came out of your mouth?"
Right.
You're right. And I was so shocked. And because I knew her personally, like, I handle it a little bit differently. It's almost better if I don't know you, because you know what I mean? Because I was in their wedding. So I mean, so it was weird. But I would say, and a lot of the older clients I have, were married and they deferred everything to their husband. They went from their dad to their husband, and their husbands died, and now they they don't know. So I would say really just wanting to know. And your partner, man, woman, whatever, should want you to know. Because if
Right.
something happened to them, they don't want you to be struggling with that. And so that's another sign. Like if they don't want you to know, that's a sign.
Right, for
Don't feel
sure.
weird.
No, I love it's a Susie Orman quote. I just realized recently doing some research, it may go back to someone else, but I heard it first from her. And that is, a man is not a financial plan. And you
No.
could change that to partner. Any
Right.
partner
But
is
however you
not a
want to do it,
financial
but yeah,
plan.
it's not.
You need to be the one responsible for your own knowledge, understanding, access. I hear that about elderly women too, don't even have passwords and can't get
Right.
in or don't know how to get in. And that's one thing I talk to my friends about, like you do all the time. Like, okay, what are you going to do if your husband passes away? Because you can have the best husband in the world and he could get hit by a bus tomorrow. I'm sorry, but what is your plan? And you
Right.
know what they tell me? They probably tell you the same thing. I'm going to call you.
Yeah, that's basically what I get. In fact, even with my own
Oh, make
my
your
dad
own
and
plan.
stepmom, it's like I will help as much as I can, but really you just again, you can't be an expert at everything and nobody's expecting you to, but you have to have some basic knowledge, at least where stuff is located, and
Mhm.
that's a bare
Well,
minimum. Yeah,
that's step one. And then step two is call a friend or have other
right.
resources. Do you know how to reach your banker? Do you know how to reach your financial advisor? Do you know who has your insurance and what kind of insurance coverage you have? You know, because all of those things should be looked at periodically anyway.
Absolutely. It's not something you can just put in a drawer. Yeah, I mean, you
Right.
should look at
Right.
it. Yeah.
I mean, insurance is one of the biggest things that most people just are so loyal and they stay with forever that you'd be surprised, and no offense, but if you shop it, sometimes you can come up with a better deal and people just can't be bothered. They just think, oh, I like this. It's always been this way. Well, with the current situation, we were talking before we started this, the current situation in the insurance market and how many people are getting their insurance canceled, myself included. And what do you do in a case like that? Well, you know, you need to know who your insurance agent is and make sure you're evaluating every year. Do I have the coverage I need? If my
Yes,
house burns
absolutely.
down in a wildfire, will it be replaced? Because I haven't looked at it in 30 years. Well, the insurance market is changing dramatically right now, which I imagine you're feeling too.
Yeah.
And that's one of those things that, you know, when you're first in a relationship and you're sussing out how are we going to split those duties, those are the kinds of things that I always encourage women to do together. And if you get that, no, I'll handle it, that is a red flag.
It is a red flag.
And then it's like, okay, I love that you're going to handle this, honey, but can you explain it to me? Can we keep the resources where I can see them? Can we look over them? I encourage couples to look at their finances together, no less than monthly. Weekly would be ideal, depending again on your budget. And if it's a monthly budget or a quarterly budget or a weekly budget, you know, but that's the kind of thing that I always go to is what are you doing together? And do you have that information? And is it shared openly? And if you don't understand it and they won't explain it, then go find an outside resource like Kelly, who can say, okay, this is what you have in investments. Your name is on these 3, his is on these 7. Honey, that's a problem.
Right.
You know, or sister, don't talk
Right.
about anybody. Don't do that mansplain shit. But you know what I'm saying is like, that's one of the things I'd like to see spread from this group is to the next generation, to the women that are experiencing it now, to the women that we can prevent from experiencing it by raising those awareness, even in the dating stage. You know, like you said, you went in not knowing anything. I went in, we shared resources. I was actually the one in charge of the finances, but he still did things behind my back. And,
Right.
you know,
So,
and then it, you know, explained it away afterwards. And I was like, oh, I don't think so. But
well,
yeah.
a lot of women will or have told me. So I've been married twice. In both, well, the first situation, our money was joint, but he was going to college, so he didn't have any money. And so whatever he did have, I was paying all the bills. So it really didn't count. The second time, once I realized what was going on, which was when we started to look for a house, our money had been separate. We hadn't put it together, and I never did because I had to pay for everything. And I was afraid of, so we didn't have a joint account. But what many women will tell me is that they each have their own, but then they have a joint account that they pay bills from, which is fine. You still have to understand the whole picture.
Right. And I advise in that case, if that is the choice, not to make it 50% contribution, base it on the percentage of income.
Right.
If he makes 70% of the income, if you take your total income, you make $100,000, he makes 70, you make 30, then he contributes 70% of whatever the total household needs is. He can keep the rest of his and you can keep the rest of yours, but
Right.
the contributions to get to 100% of what the house needs is based on the percentage of income that person earns.
Right.
And
And
the
if
partnership. And that's not always the case. Maybe it is 50-50, or maybe it's flipped. Like in your case, you were paying 100% because he made no money. That's
right.
not fun.
No.
But, and every situation is different and you need to figure out what works for you. But I think you've got to be able to understand it first.
Right. That's the point, right? Don't defer that.
Yeah.
It's like he's handling it all. Don't know, because again, if he's hit by a bus, right?
Right. Yeah. Absolutely.
And that's what I tell people with when I talk about, just sidebar, long-term care, right? Like, well, I'm married. Well, yeah, but one of you is going to go first.
Right.
Right. So planning for it is important. It may or may not include insurance, but having a plan is what's important, so that you don't end up needing something and you are starting from scratch trying to figure out what you're going to do about it.
Right. So just go there for a minute. Explain to the group, what is long-term care insurance and why would they need it?
Okay, so long-term care is, by definition, when you need substantial assistance with at least two of the daily living activities. Daily living activities, I'll just quickly, is eating, bathing, clothing yourself, toileting, continence. Those are different. I know it seems like a lot around the bathroom, but being able to have control of your continence and or at least put on your own diaper, clean yourself, whatever that might be. Getting on and off a toilet is what the toileting is. And then being ambulatory doesn't mean that you can walk, but with a walker, or cane, or in a wheelchair, you can do those things by yourself. And being able to do those 6 things is what makes us be able, or allows us to be able to live independently, because they're the basic things that we need to do. So that's what a daily living activity is. So if you need substantial assistance with 2, and it's going to last for more than 90 days, that's considered a need for long-term care. Doesn't necessarily mean that it's a professional nurse. It could just be that you need help going to the grocery store or making meals because you can't stand for that long. Whatever, a lot of it's personal care, right? It's not medical care. And that's a misconception. And so if you're going to need that type of care, many people, unfortunately, believe that Medicare will pay for that. And it doesn't. It can help for certain circumstances, but Medicare, as an example, you have to have been in the hospital for 3 days. So if you weren't ever in the hospital and you need the help, it doesn't pay. If you were and you need medical skilled type of care, then they will pay 100% for 20 days. If you need it longer than that, they'll pay a portion of it for up to 100 days. But after 100 days, they're done. And by definition, long-term care is going to last longer than 90 days. So it's not set up to pay for that. The other government agency that can help is Medicaid, or Medi-Cal, which is the California version of Medicaid. And there's all kinds of restrictions around your income and your assets that changes annually. And it's basically the state deciding where you can be helped in a nursing home. Nobody ever says to me that their long-term care plan is to let the state of California decide what public nursing home they're going to be put in, right? That's just not a plan. But sadly, if you don't have a plan, can end up being the case. So when I look at planning, some has insurance, some doesn't. Mine does. When I was 49, divorced, had 2 kids, I didn't want to have to depend on my children. I didn't have much assets because I had been financially abused. So I needed to come up with an asset that could help me in those circumstances. So I got long-term care. Long-term care is a bucket of money that you can use for those types of expenses in the future if you need them. My mother was 80 when I started to help her with her finances, too old to get long-term care. She didn't have any assets. So the plan for her was to get her into a single level, no stairs, near family. And I took over her finances so that I could make sure that, that she was covered. So it was basically just wrapping our arms around her and making sure that she had what she needed. So plans can include anything, right? But long-term care insurance doesn't have to be super expensive. People often think that it is, but it's, again, time. So the sooner you do it, the more time it has to grow. And it's just a bucket of money, another asset that can be used if you need care as you age, because they say it's like 70% of the people that are 65 today will need some form of care, long-term care, in their lifetime.
Makes sense. And you said that your mother was too old to qualify. So what is too old to qualify?
79 is the oldest you can be, but the chances of being approved. So long-term care insurance is different than life insurance in that everyone knows we're going to die sometime, right? So there's a mortality table that is figured out, and you can generally get life insurance. You just might have to pay more the older you are and the less healthy you are. With long-term care, it's a morbidity table. So they're more concerned about you living a long time and not being able to care for yourself. So it's a lot more difficult to get. I've had more people decline for long-term care than life insurance by far. So, and it's more expensive. So it's at a price when you get it based on your age and your health. And that price stays the same. In the case of the stuff that I work with, it actually gets dividends, so it can decrease in cost as you get older, which is unique in the industry. And it also allows you to pay friends and family for helping with personal care, which usually the insurance doesn't. It requires, a licensed professional to help you, but ours does not. So it's looking at how do you feel about spending your retirement savings on care, if it came down to it, right? Because
Right, that would be your other option.
That's your other option, is
build it
to
into your
self-insure.
retirement plan that I'm going to have to take care of my needs, assuming that I don't have someone volunteering to keep me housed and
Right.
take care of
And
me.
so if you
Yeah.
did have to go in, like say your Social Security, you would always, use all of your assets. I mean, you're going to have some income that could go towards it, but it's just the cost of what it is. So, I mean, it can cost anywhere from $4,000 a month to $12,000 a month, depending on, where you are. If you're in a skilled facility, if you're just having someone come into your home, 90% of long-term care is provided in the home.
Which most people want to stay in their own home.
Mm-hmm.
So
Exactly.
does it cover facilities if you choose to go into a facility?
Absolutely. And so it covers for cognitive issues as well. So dementia and Alzheimer's are considered, it stops you from being able to take care of yourself. It's a plan that's needed, right? So again, it can include insurance, or it could include, when you're downsizing from your home, getting a single level, right? People don't think about stairs, but stairs, when normally people fall, it is very difficult to recover.
Yes, for sure.
So,
well, that's really interesting. We're kind of going off, but I want to talk long-term care. I think that's really important, especially because the age range of our audience can be very young to much older. And if they are in a situation where they've been financially abused and they've left a relationship and they're later in their life, they may not have the family members nearby to help out, or things like that. So it is an important piece, like you said. If you're looking at everything, part of that planning would be to consider whether this would be an important piece for you in your situation or not. But it's nice,
might just be moving close to family. The planning part's what I push. I don't advocate for or against long-term care insurance until I know the person's situation. It may just be, hey, you might want to think about relocating and moving to Ohio for my families.
To be close to your parents, yes, because they're going to need you. Right. Okay. All right, Kellie. Well, thank you so much. So tell me, what is next for you in your business? Where are you going? You've been doing this a while. You found your niche. You like working with women. Mm-hmm. You're comfortable with all this that we've talked about. You obviously have an affinity for women who've been divorced and who have been financially abused. But what's next?
Well, so one of the reasons why I was hesitant to take on this second career was because I got my mind just went blank. I saw that the internet froze and my mind just went, sorry about that. was because I'm not going to cold call anyone, right? So if you're going to be in business for yourself, you have to have a way that you're going to get new clients. And that was a big concern for me because I'm not pushy, right? So if somebody wants something, I want to help them. But how do you find out if someone wants something? So my current goal is to find a sustainable way to reach out to people that doesn't include spamming them or reaching out to strangers. So my next step is working through that. The Women's Network, referrals, basically that's how I work, is through referrals. But I have to come up with a way that makes sense. And I'm not looking to hire a bunch of staff. I turned 60 in June. I just really like what I do because it really makes me feel like I'm doing something important when I can help women. So I only need to do it as much as I can find people that need the help, but I still have to figure out how to do that. So that's kind of what's next for me.
Well, that's always, personal growth. It's always like, what are we doing today? What can we do next? How are we going to get to the next step? What is it? I'm just a really driven person. So I'm always curious what's on other people's agendas. Where are they going? What's the next piece for them? And I understand.
Oh yeah, I know. That didn't come out like I have two aging parents. And so having the freedom to be able to be there for them is really my priority right now.
That's important. That's good that you're able to do that. That's awesome. All right. So if one of our members wants to reach out to you, what's the best place for her to contact you? How should she contact you?
She's welcome to call me or to email me. I'm also on the New York Life website. If you searched for me, you would find me there. But do you want me to say my phone number?
Well, can we put it in the comments below the video?
Yeah, like the little chat thing.
Yeah, we'll put it in there when we post this, if that's okay.
Okay, yeah, let's just do that. That'd be easier than try. Because, the end of anytime you guys are going to ever look for a email address, mine is at ft.newyorklife.com. That is way too long. People should not have to. But so if you ever have a choice, don't pick one of those.
No, I get it. My company name, Sherrington Financial Fitness, we went with sherringtonfinancial.com because it was like, okay, that's too long. So I totally understand. It's important. Well, Kelly, I really appreciate you being here and sharing so much information with our group and for being a member of the group so people can even reach you in the group if they wanted to. And for giving us some insights and some feedbacks and some thoughts, lots to chew on, lots to think about. Of course, if anyone has any questions, they can post them and you can respond directly. Or if I see them and I don't see that you responded, I'll reach out to you. But I appreciate it. And I just want to give you a shout out for all the women who are listening here to know that when Kelly says she's all about building trust, that is really her brand. She is a trustworthy person. She has a big heart. She cares. And she wants to help. So I think that that's really who you are, Kelly. And I appreciate that you when I asked you to do this, you said yes. And, I think that's great. So thank you for being here today. We want to give more and more resources to our group all the time. And we appreciate you being here and sharing with us. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much.